some reason, the HVAC is out, and we can't figure out why, right? And I want to encourage you that I spent the last 3 days, about 10 hours a day, with some fellow presbyters. And one of the fun conversations in the midst of all of our business was our observations that in the last 2 or 3 pews of all these different churches, there's a stack of blankets. So, guys, we're in good company. I don't know where all the blankets, oh, there they are. There's at least 2 over here. So if you need a blanket, say, here's the rule of thumb. If you ever need a blanket, Kelly happens to be a blanket magnet. So I just ask her. She'll tell you where it is. Okay? All right, so a little bit of editorializing before I get into the study. So Vivian will be here Wednesday around noon. For those of you who haven't met Vivian before, she's been a long-term member of the PCA. She was a hippie girl in the Woodstock generation, and God saved her, I think, in the early 70s. She was one of the very first, probably the first crew of generation of people to go into the opening, going into the opening China of China in the late 80s. She went over as an English teacher and used that for missions work. And coming back here, she served as the secretary for the second president, Joey Pipa, of Greenville Theological Seminary in Greenville, South Carolina. And before coming back to her home here, she was a member of our church. She particularly wanted to be a member of our church because she saw and thought God was using it to reach young adults, and that's where she wanted her life to end. And we went through a biblical process of recognizing that has nothing to do with culture and wokeism. This is before all that garbage came up, which is basically a ripoff. When a group of people offend God in a particular type of cultural sin, the corruption of that sin, you're to expect that it's to descend. That would be the second commandment to the third or fourth generation kind of thing. And so when we went through the process of acknowledging our forefathers' sins, we found something very interesting. Vivian actually found out that she had a cousin she didn't know by blood. Someone did the 23andMe thing, and I think it was her brother in Colorado, and said, we've got a first cousin in Montgomery. Do you know this person? Name this person. She didn't know who this person was. Lo and behold, you're going to love this story very, very quickly. Her grandfather, who she fondly remembered, an elder of this church, First Pres, when it was downtown. On Sunday afternoons, he would go for a walk to smoke his cigarette because his family couldn't appreciate the aroma of the cigarette. She found out that he actually would go to the former maid's house, who he had children by, and he would spend the afternoon with his second family. And that this person, who was her cousin once removed, once removed because it was grandfather, her grandfather was her grandfather. And the timing of all of that was quite sweet. It was actually personal to our church, guys, particularly relevant. And so that family visited, came to church, and it's quite cool. So she's quite encouraged to be coming back to be a part of our congregation again. If you know anything about Greenville Theological Seminary, you don't have to worry about her falling into any woke or DEI garbage. Greenville is as conservative as they come. It's probably the most conservative Reformed Presbyterian seminary out there right now. And she loves this congregation. And even without meeting you all, you'll find that she loves you and cares for you and is willing to do whatever she can to help you in your life. So we're going to take up an offering today for her, and we're going to help try and offset. She can't bring back the furniture and things that she was using. She's got to buy stuff here. Fortunately, our used retail shops are overflowing with these things. So she should be okay, but she needs a little financial help. She doesn't know we're doing this. This is a gift, so we'll take it up this week, and then since it's a little bit late notice, we'll give her whatever we've got, and then we'll take it up next week as well. We'll put it into. Are we doing one of those Visa gift cards or something? I don't. Are you going to do cash? Okay. All right. Good enough. All right. Yes, cash. In this case, cash is queen. Right. Going to a lady, queen. Okay. Okay. Second bit of editorializing. So one of the things that you promised to support me in, and I'm stressing this as your pastor, is my cooperation and help within the presbytery. All right. One of the benefits you have is that if you think I've gone off the reservation at any point, okay, you don't have to worry about, the standard politics, because we're all humans and we still have the flesh, and wolves do creep in among us. You don't have to worry about the politics that happens in a church that uses a congregational form of government, where basically if the pastor is popular enough, he can kind of get away with what he wants. That's just not the case here. If you think that in my belief or my practice I'm unbecoming of a profession of faith at a higher level than the average person in the pew, because I am an officer in the church, then you can take it to your elders and ask them to take it to presbytery. And if they won't, then you can take it to presbytery. All right? So that's why my formal membership, my vowed membership, is at the presbytery. It is a court of the church universal. It's not a local congregation, right? But we do it that way so that each of our teaching elders can be under vows that God will hold them accountable to through the processes of church discipline. So members, including ruling elders, deacons, are under the process of church discipline in their local congregation, and so are teaching elders at the presbytery level. And we do that because obviously most teaching elders have more training than the average lay person. And, at times some of us can be Svengali-like, right? Not me, I'm too much of a jerk. You'll never fall for my garbage, right? So I've spent the last 3 days involved in a case of discipline. And it was overwhelming, and it was good. I ended the last day, last night. I left at 7 o'clock. I started at 8 o'clock. Last night I left. The last thing I had said about 2 hours earlier was said in the midst of tears. And I wasn't, the person, the victim, the accused is the technical term. Okay? I wasn't even the sacrificial victim. But I ended up, and I don't want to explain why, but I ended up volunteering for the rather difficult task of being the prosecutor. And the process humbled me quite a bit, and reminded me of my own continuing needs for the grace and mercy of Jesus Christ. So I'm going to be tired today. Dave suggests, because we don't have any HVAC, I got to bring the fire in the sermon, and that just ain't going to happen. Okay? But I just wanted to take this opportunity to simply observe that there's more going on, all right, in the life of our church than you might realize at times. I mean, obviously, we have the Hopes Outreach, through which we partner with Gateway Baptist. This is a ministry of their church, all right? And my elders who are not here because they're sick don't realize that sending me texts right now is not helpful. I had a member one time, right in the middle of a sermon, call me on the phone. And he did it on purpose. And I was just a former member, right? I'm just like, all right, grow up, dude. So, where was I? I have no idea where I was. Okay, so I'll just do my transition thing. So, have any of you ever done the Dale Carnegie How to Win Friends and Influence People training? Okay, so yeah, and my first real professional job, I'd worked for the Republican Party in Delaware for a while, but that was finishing up college. But my first real professional job, when they promoted me to my first management position, they thought, yeah, he should get this training. Okay, and that's a polite way of saying, yeah, he's a bit of a jerk. We need to figure out how to help him win friends and influence people. So I took this course, and I clicked with it right away. And at the end, they tried to recruit me to be a trainer, you know, and I'm like, I'm not going to do that. It was kind of a franchise thing. If you decide to be a trainer, you don't get paid unless you recruit people to it, right? But they had this one little graduation kind of thing. Okay, you had to stand up there, and you had to follow the process of putting together a talk, right? And the trainer would call out the subject to you. And you had 30 seconds to set up your talk in your head and then spit it out in no more than 3 minutes, right? And mine was motorcycles. Now, I have no experience with a motorcycle because when I was a teenager and us brothers and friends were dealing with what was called mini bikes at the time, I could never get the coordination down of, and I always crashed into trees. So I decided, nah, I'm never going near motorcycles. So that was the gist of my 3-minute talk with a little bit of blarney, a little bit of Irish going on there, right? And apparently it's a skill I have. So I'm going to use that skill because I'm tired, and that means I'm weak, and I don't have really good skills, so I'm going to connect the last 3 days to the idea of being a pilgrim. So you're not just alone in the Christian life. Is that correct? Right? You travel with other pilgrims. And you're not just friends who've gone out for the Saturday afternoon, Saturday morning Chilaka hike. Did I say that right? Chilaka? Chewakla. Okay, so, you know, all you down here in Alabama, the only reason you all got it together like that is because your ancestors were drinking the corn whiskey, and when the Indians were mumbling at them, they figured out how to say it. That's the only reason, all right? So, you know, Chewakla hike, and, you know, you're going along, and one of you falls into the creek, and all of you laugh. You don't think to give them your extra pair of socks, and, you know, the other person gets a little famished, and you don't really like that stupid nutty bar you brought anyway, so you give them the half that you didn't eat, and I mean, you know, and you're friends. That's the way the world works. That's not what we're talking about when we say that we're pilgriming. We're journeying together. We're meaning we get up in the morning, and within our own ordinary family unit, right? And that family unit, you remember in the book of, Numbers? The heads of 10, and then the heads of 100, the heads of 1,000. That was their organization, right, of their various tribes, and then the camp, right? The heads of 10 would be a father. And he might have him and his wife, that's 2. 4 or 5 children, that would be 7. Where'd the other 3 come from? Well, the father's brother, who never got married, right? The wife's sister, who never got married, and then the wife's aunt, who was widowed or never got married. And that would be the family unit when they talk about 10. And it wasn't an exact 10. It could be 8 to 12 or something like that. But it was, you know, a round number of 10. And that would be who you were camping with. Now, you had duties every morning that you did, not only for yourself, but for each other. You know, and as you matured in this relationship of love with each other, You know, the aunt over here, she was an expert at figuring out how to treat scorpion bites because it happened all the time, right? The family next to you, they actually had someone in the family who somehow had, they learned medicinal skills and they knew how to take snake bites, which happened all the time. And then you and your family, you learned how to take care of blisters, your own and your Weasley little brothers who always whined about it, never wanted to take care of his own blisters, you know. I mean, this is what hiking through a wilderness was like. You were part of a community that cared for each other. And then you had 10 groups of 10. And then 10 groups of 100. And then 10 groups of 1,000. And then 5 or 6 of those, and now you have a whole tribe. And then 12 of those, and you have the church universal. Now today it's much bigger. Today it's much broader. And so it can at times, right, easily seem like me and my church. And that's when you're in a church that has 4, 5 plus 100, right? A mega church. And then there are the majority of churches. 90% of the churches in America of evangelical background who have credible professions of faith. Not saying the others in the other Protestant churches don't have credible professions of faith. Not even saying that some in the Roman Catholic Church don't have credible profession of faith. They may, but the Roman Catholic Church is not a true church. It is a synagogue of Satan, according to Scripture. They used to have the truth. They've rejected it, okay? If you're thinking, is there anyone else who's done that? Yeah, the whole Old Testament church that rejected Jesus, that we call the modern-day Jewish religions. They're Old Testament Jewish religions trying to live in a New Testament era based on a rejection of the Messiah. That's what apostasy is. You fall away from the faith, okay? So they're out there, okay? And for the most part, they're not trying to hike through because they've already lost the pilgrim mentality. They're trying to figure out how to conquer enough territory here that they can take care of themselves and enjoy whatever they can from this life. Eat, drink, and do the best you can to be merry. Hope you don't sin, because tomorrow you're going to die and face judgment. That's all they can offer. Well, and that's the temptation for us, is it not? That's a temptation for individual members, right, in our small little camp. That's a temptation for denominations in a larger camp, right? And we routinely face these. We have a number of those in Reformed profession right now. I'm not going to go into those, stir up trouble for some of you who are not aware of them. But there's continual temptations to know we're called to conquer this world and make it like the next world as much as possible. We're called to equip each other on how to grow in Christ-likeness, how to equip you to grow in love for God and love for Jesus. And then what will happen is that will overflow in your lives. Read Ephesians chapter 4, Colossians chapter 3. Okay, the putting off and the putting on. The putting off of the remnants of the old nature, the putting on of the new nature in Jesus Christ. That's what we're to disciple you in. Those are the lessons. Those are the, watch that, the types are the scorpion bites, the snake bites, the grumbling, the discontent with manna, all right? All of those those are the pictures of spiritual realities. The Christian life is filled with, someone did something mad to me and it prompted me to behave in a way that I think I'm justified. Someone who's more mature than me, my older sister, the person discipling me, my pastor or elders, says, it doesn't matter the provocation, how you handle that was sin. You need to repent of that. But does that mean they get away? That's the way the world works. That's the way the world thinks. It's either you or them. One of you's got to pay the price. In the church, Christ paid the price. You can be forgiving to one another, even when the other person doesn't care and doesn't want it. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. You can leave it alone. You can actually truly not just hear the pastor say these things that then feel like lead weights. You can actually hear them in joy and truly be saved and truly be forgiven and truly be freed. Isn't that what we say salvation is all about? The practical experience of the ongoing. And so as we're walking through the wilderness, it's not about how to find a place where you can kick out all the scorpions and all the snakes and dig a well, and then it turns into an oasis, and everything's perfect, and you attract more people, and it's great. Me and our little kingdom. That's not what it's about. It's just not. And that will stagnate. I'm thinking of one pastor who, in the early 2000s, the Young, Restless, and Reformed, he was the bomb in attracting young adults back to the faith. A little bit rough, a little bit obnoxious, occasionally foul-mouthed, right? And then at some point, his leadership around him said, you're just not qualified to be a pastor. I don't think he even had seminary, now that I think about it. I could be wrong about that part. Just not qualified to be a pastor. Well, he didn't like that, and the whole thing exploded. I mean, they had like 10 campuses, 5,000, 10,000 members. The whole thing absolutely exploded. And then he just disappeared. And then he popped up again in Arizona, I think a suburb of Phoenix. And he had an aptly reformed named church. None of the former elders said he should be reformed. He just did this on his own. And then lo and behold, he's backed by a new apostolic reformation self-appointed apostles, the people who form the majority of the religious council around Donald Trump. You need to pray for him. He's not a believer. He's got Christian inclinations. And this guy grows and grows and grows. And now he's part of the new group that's advising President Trump on how Christianity works. He's a wolf. He's an honest-to-goodness wolf. And doing my Dale Carnegie transition garbage, okay? It's actually a good skill, all right? That's an example of what happens when we make this world the goal. This world is not the goal. Your accumulation of this world's riches is not the goal. What does Jesus say about laying up treasures in heaven? Where moth, that was pretty good. Moth and rust can't break it and destroy, the thief can't steal, right? Okay? Treasure's eternal. The flesh does not value what you see in the first Lord of the Rings movie, where Galadriel is facing the temptation from Frodo of the ring. And she swells up in a vision of what she would be. Basically, watch this, Asherah. That's what Tolkien was thinking of. The pagan goddess, a vicious, evil, sexually seductive, destructive, abort babies, burn them on the altar of Molech, all of it. Jezebel was her high priestess, okay, in that period of time. That's the picture of Galadriel there. And then all of a sudden you see her, and she's like, and she's confirming that she's passed the probationary test of the covenant of works. Now, Tolkien was screwed up in his theology, Roman Catholic. He still thinks that stuff functions in the church. Doesn't. But that's an apt image for us of someone who has experienced the blessings of Christ. This world's not my home, and it's not the home of my people. If it was, they'd be fighting. They'd do the normal thing you do in this world to conquer a kingdom and kick all your enemies out. That's the way it works. But this world isn't our home. We're journeying through this world. And when we're engaging the enemy, there's two different types, spiritual and material. And until we have confirmation, biblical marks that a person is a false teacher, okay, until we have biblical confirmation of that, we must be warning and pleading with people because they may just be struggling with the remnants of their sinfulness and have not been discipled well. I don't mean they haven't been taught well. I mean the Spirit has not yet used what they've received to cause them to be broken, healed, and restored. That's what we're about in this journey. The gold, the precious gems, the silver that we're accumulating, that lines the streets of the new heavens, the new earth, the new Jerusalem, are but, watch this, they said of Solomon that silver was so precious in his kingdom that they didn't even count its value. I mean, so abundant. Sorry. Guys, we're heading for an eternity where all that is physical, at the end of the day, is the same as a bottle of white glue, a piece of copy paper, and a box of toothpicks in your drawer. It's going to be fun for the afternoon, seeing what you can come up with. I love doing those kind of things. The idea of building a castle out of toothpicks. Ooh, right? But that's it. It's worth about, anyone who loves building Legos knows this. It's worth about 5 minutes of pleasure when you're done it. Look! That's great, right? Yeah, great. Okay. Let me try something new. That's just the way it is, right? Some people are looking at that with jigsaw puzzles. Jigsaw puzzles are too hard for me. Leave it alone. It's done. Go get a new jigsaw puzzle. All of these illustrations, I'm trying to point out that the Christian life you're called to, you're supported by your church. Sometimes we're supported also by our natural family that's a part of the church. But at the end of the day, in terms of the pilgriming, it's who you're surrounded by. And your goal is not to accumulate the marks of reputation and respect that this world offers. Your goal is to accumulate the actual moments that Galadriel experienced, where some wickedness that still had a grip on you was fundamentally broken. Oh, it may still be there, and it may every now and then make a mess in the living room. But increasingly, it's easy to clean up, and it's easy to get rid of, and you can leave it behind. Oh yeah, I used to get blisters all the time on my big toe, but I've learned how to change my sandals, and sand doesn't get in there and rub that big toe, so I hardly ever get blisters there anymore. That's me, by the way, with ants down here, okay? I hardly get bit by fire ants anymore. It's only 3 or 4 times a year now, okay? It's just like, it used to be, in certain seasons, it used to be weekly, no matter what I did, okay? I think they basically send messages, and they have it written somewhere and deep in the warrens of one of these, queen ants, okay? Reed DePace smells like this, and here's where you can find him. This is what we're about here. Does this make sense? Okay, any questions or comments on what I just said? Go for it.
If we pilgrimage properly, it will have an effect on the world.
Well, it will only have this effect if we pilgrimage properly.
But it's not the effect of us.
Well, it's the Spirit working through us, and the Spirit's working through us to do what? To call the lost elect through our witness. Okay, and those are actually the real riches you're going to be rejoicing in eternity. I mean, we all know this as Christians. You think about family members who aren't saved, and what's your first thought? The closer your relationship with them, the more you're like, oh, God, please. Oh, God, please. I woke up last night, I'm on X, so if I wake up, that's where I go to listen to the blather, because it will put me to sleep. And I'm looking at comments, and this person talked about how they went and visited their son's grave. Died at the age of 24. And they had a picture of a graveyard. I don't know if it was the graveyard he was in or not. And I'm sitting there, and I'm going, man, that's got to be heartbreaking. Man. And then, we're cut off from our daughter. We don't know where she is. We think she's in Montgomery. We don't know where she lives. Every time I see a Haynes ambulance, that's where I last heard she worked. But they've got those windows tinted. You can't see in. We had one catty corner behind us on the way down Atlanta Highway this morning. I was so tempted to get out and go knock on the window. And it crossed my mind. What if she dies? What if she's dead? I mean, she basically has gotten rid of us and has adopted a whole new family. Nothing to do with us. It's hard. I struggle to pray godly imprecatory prayers against the father, mother of that group. I know who they are. But that's what happens. And so we're finishing up Dave's thought. That those are true riches. And the more we grow in the love of Christ, I don't mean the more that we express love for Christ. I mean the more that his love shed on us by the work of the Holy Spirit, who transforms us into Christ, who came to the world because it was breaking his heart, right? Who on the cross cries out with a sincerity, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. And then you see that reflected in the first Christian martyr, Stephen, who says, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. I mean, that's what we mean, that the love of Christ grow in you. Now, well, what do? Well, the crazy thing is we just do the ordinary things. Teach you what a snake is. Teach you how to avoid it, biblically how to avoid it, not the way the world trains, if I could use another metaphor. We teach you how to understand human nature in its fallen experience, right? In its original created structure, its fallen experience, and now its renewed experience. We don't sit there and give you personality tests and tell you to understand your personality types. Oh, go get your Enneagram done. All right? That's the way the world works. That's not how the church works. The church works by something that no one expects to be functioning. What does the Bible tell us to do? If people don't get saved unless God sends someone to preach the word, and, well, you're just talking it's a mere intellectual exercise? No, that's the crazy thing. The majority of people hear us preach the word do not respond the right way. It's not the power of our words. It's the power of the Holy Spirit who uses our words as the opportunity to do what Dave's describing. That's what we mean when an ordinary means of grace. Look, so Addie is, don't tell anyone I said this, but Addie sometimes is a very mean wife. Okay? All right? This morning, she had made, while I was gone, she had made, she's got this wonderful sourdough recipe from Megan, and so she's making homemade bread all the time. We don't eat store-bought bread hardly ever. It's great. Okay? No more of the problems I would have in my diet with all those things. So she made these apple cinnamon muffins. And they're pretty good, right? I would always appreciate more of the sweetener, monk fruit. Ugh, I want real sugar, but that kills me. So, and so I had half of one of those for breakfast this morning, right? And, okay, it's pretty good, but I have no idea where I was going with this story. There's what happens when you're tired. Kelly, stop laughing. She's roaring back there, right?
You're talking about your mean wife.
Yeah, I figured you'd remember that part. So, the only one I do not like telling these kind of stories to is Rhonda, because she's immediately going, "Where's my knives?" Oh, you too. You just are going, "Hey, you want to play tennis?" She's got this closet full of busted tennis rackets, doesn't she, Paul? I love you guys. I really do love you. But the point is, these ordinary things. I have no idea how that apple cinnamon muffin is going to affect me, but I do know that it's going to be pretty good, right? Because it was made with ingredients that are conducive to my own digestive system and everything's fine. But here's how Addie was mean this morning. You want to try some of the butternut squash I made yesterday? No, I hate that stuff. She knows I hate it. I can't stand it. And I just looked at her and I went, like, what's wrong with you? And she's response was, no, it's really good. You need to try some. Just like, what in the world? Well, and you all know this. Yeah, Reed, whether you like it or not, it's going to be good for you. Open up your mouth, right? Okay, that's what we do with our kids, grandkids, right? Okay, well, that's what ordinary means of grace are. We do these things. We gather for worship. That's the big context on Sunday. right? We have the sermon. My gosh, guys, I found out something very encouraging. Churches around the world, particularly Reformed Presbyterian churches, they follow the exact same Sunday model we do. Morning worship, Sunday school or before or after it, and then a Sunday evening service. I'm just like, where did they, and I know because there's a couple of really good books that have analyzed the information we have from the early church. This actually is the pattern we learned from the early church. Why? Well, because it fit their culture and it was consistent. Watch this. This is the most important part. It was consistent with God's moral law, particularly the fourth commandment. And so we have every hope that God's going to use this. You can read all the Bible books you want. You can go to any Bible study, any seminary, college, and you can get involved with any church ministries you want and all those other things. None of them have a promise of God's usage. Now, God can use whatever he wants. I'm not saying, therefore, no to such things. I would like them to pay attention to their relationship to the church. For example, PCA's Reformed University Fellowship. Those things are particularly led by, watch this, ordained teaching elders. They're actually pastors who then, in the midst of the ordinary life of drawing students in who come from a Christian background or not, then take them to local PCA churches. Is that for Odie? Okay. Oh my gosh. Everyone look at Kelly real quick. Now listen, I will acknowledge that whether you like it or not, that kind of behavior is helpful as you're walking through a desert. So, it's okay, right? So God promises this is the context of the ordinary means of grace that he uses. And so when we talk about we want to gift you with what God says he'll use to grow you in your love for him, that's nothing more than providing a context in which his love for you, already fully expressed in the work and person of Jesus Christ, that is already now made fully accessible by sovereign decree and therefore sovereign action of God, guaranteed to work in your life, up to and including changing your nature so that you are willing to will what he wills. Some of us will only get there with 2 or 3 talents. Some of us 10, some of us 20. Some of us will only get there with a 30-fold, some 60, some 100-fold. The whole point there is not to give you measurement points. The whole point there is to say that not everyone is going to experience the same degree of sanctification, of sending on building materials ahead, if we were not really dealing with this illustration very well. But when we get glorified, and when we stand in the kingdom, and we see the guys sitting on the 24 thrones around Jesus, not a single one of us will feel a moment of a tinge of jealousy, selfish ambition. We'll be free of all of that. We will see the perfection and the rightness of that, and we will rejoice in their rewards and in ours. The love of God being shed in our hearts. That's what the Christian journey is about. And it's structured as a pilgrimage because this world is not our home. And we waste our time if we pursue any ideology that says you're supposed to conquer this world before you get the next. Okay? So I've taken up the whole time. Thank you, Dave. I'm not going to wax on this any further. I am going to start at the summary. We've already covered 2 of these points. Next time, all right, so that we can talk about there is a warfare going on. All right, some of us kind of miss these details, but as they were marching through the wilderness, all right, the Amalekites at one point said, "Hey," and they attacked the train of the camp, and the train of the camp was the weak and the elderly and the infirm, right, and killed some and took them captive, right, and then there was a king who did that. He was down in the Negev, right? And he attacked them. And then there were the Midianites and the Moabites who tried to corrupt them. And, I mean, guys, we have enemies all the time. There turned out to be lots of enemies within the camp. I mean, fiery snakes killed some of them. Bitter water killed some. Ground opening up killed others. And so these are pictures of what we're going to experience as a church in the midst of other churches here in Southeast Alabama, the PCA churches and other sister churches who have a credible profession of faith. And so I hope this was helpful this morning. It is, quite honestly, a little bit of trying to weave everything together so that you'll go, this is just not a Sunday school where he's blathering point by point of I don't know why he's doing this. This is, take a look at the big picture. Take a look at what you've been offered. Be encouraged. God's going to use it whether you paid attention or not. You're going to be equipped for the journey, and it's going to be fine. Okay? Any other final questions? Okay, hold the comment. I know he's got another one. He's bubbling, all right, which is fine. That's good. All right, let's take our break, and then we'll gather back together to worship. Okay? Lord Jesus, please make this extended transition a blessing to my brothers.